It's really a pleasure to be here, and I've been here since the beginning of these events. And Marcus, thank you for your continuing sponsorship to make all this work and happen. And it's a particularly great pleasure to have the opportunity to introduce this morning's two outstanding keynote speakers, Anthony Allard and Ahmad Jashatila from Finis Investment Group. So among other perspectives that they bring, together they represent two very crucial and interdependent domains within the clean technology ecosystem. So Ahmad, the startup and venture investing domain; Anthony, the domain of mature energy technology companies and corporate venture, M&A, and partnerships. So as you hear them today, consider how these are related. It's certainly important to understand them for students thinking about where they're going to go and where they start their careers. And then later today, you'll hear from speakers representing other key domains in the ecosystem, including financial services, utilities, corporations along the energy and power value chains, law, government, NGOs, and of course the research and academic institutions. Also, as you listen to these speakers for insights about the state of clean tech, the energy transition, the abundance economy, I urge you to consider what they say regarding and kind of in light of the major drivers of the resource revolution, as Matt Rogers coined the term some years ago: policy, technology, finance, economics, and human behavior. And in this tumultuous policy environment, understanding each of those drivers and the roles that they play, and what's going to happen in the years ahead against a difficult policy backdrop is terribly important. So our first speaker, Anthony Allard. So to give a little context, when I first attended the first Cleantech Summit years ago, I was already familiar with Hitachi Energy's predecessor, ABB Power Grids, as a leading innovator, and I learned about that working with Jim Rogers, of the Duke Energy's former CEO, and his team on grid modernization and utility of the future. So you're going to hear about the utility of the future today, and so we've been working on it for a long time, but the progress has been tremendous, and what we're going to hear shortly about it will be very encouraging. Hitachi Energy is a leader in technology, services, and solutions for the power sector that are essential for the transition to a low-carbon economy. But this is important, also essential for enabling utilities to perform well financially and to meet their core responsibilities of reliability and providing energy services affordably. I wanted to just give a little bit of context before I tell you about Anthony's background. So the Hitachi Energy's predecessors, Hitachi, ABB, Brown Boveri, and ASIA, have been leading innovation in the power sector all the way back to 1883. In 1954, ASIA installed the first high-voltage direct current transmission line. In 1957, Hitachi released the first computer and software for addressing issues in transmission lines. The partnership of ABB Power Grids with North Carolina universities goes all the way back to 1991, a very important relationship for the state. In 1997, ASIA installed the first HVDC light technology, which is essential for long-distance transmission, in particularly underwater, and that vastly improved the power delivery and financial performance and financeability of offshore wind, for example. So to a lot of you, this may seem like ancient history, but particularly for the students in the room, it's especially important as you look ahead in your career, to really understand some of this history, especially at a chaotic time, and to be aware of how the energy sector evolved. You'll be reassured, even in all the chaos that's going on, that these companies have faced and survived major crises: wars, periods of economic uncertainty, financial market turmoil, and major shifts in policy and politics. These craziness is not new. It may be a little extreme right now, but it's not new. The vast majority of the companies like these, the high-quality companies, are going to survive through this tumultuous period. They'll be hiring, and their energy transition-related businesses will thrive. So with that, let me say a few words about Anthony. He's Executive Vice President and a member of the Executive Committee of Hitachi Energy, and he's also the region head for North America. Just prior to Hitachi Energy, he was Chief Operating Officer of BECIS, a leading energy services solution provider in Singapore. He spent most of his career in the power sector at GE and Alstom, two terrific companies, where he worked in multiple countries on 4 continents and held several executive level positions, including as general manager of important business units in Mexico and strategic partnerships in China. He spent 10 years working for Alstom Grid in the Americas in strategy, commercial, and operation management roles. He's got an MBA from Yale University and 2 master's degrees in engineering and telecommunications from Institut Polytechnique in Grenoble, in France. He's a thought leader, a leading speaker in the power sector. He's got a great podcast that you may want to check out and subscribe to. He's an expert on transformation of the grid and what to expect in the grid of the future. He's also a strong advocate for education to ensure that the power sector has the skilled workforce that is required for the major changes underway and the transition to a low-carbon economy. Please join me in welcoming Anthony Allard to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Very good. Okay, that was quite an introduction. I'm going to have to get a recording of that and send it to my mom. She'll be very proud. Now, thank you for coming so early on the morning. So I'm here to talk to you about the accelerated demand for power. And I thought, okay, how do I wake everybody up this morning at 9 a.m.? So we're going to do a game here, a quick game. If I show you that picture, how do you connect this picture with what I'm supposed to talk to you about? Any thought? Yeah?
24/7 power or powering the airport?
Great guess, yes. So more precisely, this is a picture of a very unfortunate passenger on Friday, last Friday at London Heathrow. Some of you might have heard about it, but on Friday morning, the world and those passengers woke up to the news that London Heathrow power was out. Why was it out? Because there had been a fire at a power station close to Heathrow, which was powering the airport. So big issue. The airport was out for an entire day. And one of those persons who woke up to this news and was wondering, how am I going to go home, was me. Because I woke up at 4 a.m. on Friday morning in the middle of the month in Austria, where I was there for work, and wondering, okay, the airport is closed, I'm flying back home to DC through London Heathrow. Well, that's not going to happen. So how am I going to go home? And luckily, I was able to find my way home through Amsterdam. But the point is, the reason why I brought that up is just to make 2 points. Number one is power. The world is relying more and more on the electricity to function. That's number one. But number two, power is like water. We don't think about it. We turn on the switch or we open the tap and we assume it's always going to be available. But when it's not, it's kind of a problem. And that was the case on Friday. So going forward, what we're going to see is we're going to see a world where we need more and more power, but also this power is going to have to be reliable, and the system is going to have to be resilient, because we cannot afford this type of disruption like what we saw last Friday in the UK. So if we take a step back, what are the key challenges over time when you think about energy? The first one is the world needs more power. Why is that? Well, there are a couple of reasons. Historically, it's always been about, okay, yes, we have more and more people on this planet. Yes, the economy is growing, so we need more power. But at the same time, we also see a number of new events that we've been facing now for about 10 years or so, right? The first one is electric vehicle, right? We all know that there is an acceleration in adoption in EV. In the US, maybe it's not going as fast as we thought it would, but still, we see an acceleration. In China, as we speak, almost half of the vehicles sold in 2024 were EV, which is quite impressive when you think about the size of China. Then data center, I know we have some session later, and Kelly on one of those sessions. Data center consumes so much power, it's unbelievable. So try to put things in perspective. Sorry, I thought the light went out for a second. That would have been a good example. But data center, and if we put things in perspective, it's common now to see data center which consume 400 megawatts. To put things in perspective, 400 megawatt plus or minus is the amount of power that you need to power 400,000 homes. So Wake County, which is pretty close from here, which is where our office is, close to Raleigh, is about 400,000 homes. So what we see is almost on a weekly basis, the big data center of the world, the Google, the Meta, the Amazon, are putting online data center which consume at least the same amount of power that 400,000 homes would consume. And now we've been working now for a number of years with some of those big companies for data center which are bigger than a gigawatt, so 1,000 megawatts. So the scale of those data center is really hard to grasp, but it is really pushing really the demand for electricity. That's number one. Number two, as a society, our duty is we need to reduce carbon emissions. And for that, electrification of our economy is key, and I'll come back to that. And number three, security of supply. So I highlighted a few minutes ago the issue of reliability, right? Again, we cannot have event like the London Heathrow event of last Friday every single day. That's not going to work. Resiliency, right? Unfortunately, here in North Carolina, we know that last year we had the terrible hurricane of Helen, which really disrupted many communities, and including because of the power outage that came with it, right? So the system going forward needs to be very resilient. And then finally, also on the energy of supply, there's the topic of geopolitics and the actual security of having access to power, right? If we now rewind 3 years ago, Europe and the war of Russia against Ukraine, all of a sudden, Europe lost almost all of its access to gas, right? So that became a big crisis. Fast forward 3 years later, well, Europe is still struggling with that, right? So prices are still high. We still see companies or just cannot afford the price of power in Europe, moving in different parts of the world. So, and that's obviously a challenge for Europe and its economy. China, we've seen China accelerating its investment in renewable energy now for a number of years. And yes, it's part of it is for the economy, but the other reason is geopolitics. China is the biggest importer of oil and gas. So they have the need to become more independent going forward. So those are the three kind of overarching theme and challenges of our time when you think about the energy. So to come back to decarbonization, which was my second point, we see and we will continue to see a shift of our economies around the world and here also, including here in the US, of the economy being powered more and more by electricity. So think about transportation, EV, and we certainly work in the US with bus transportation companies who are shifting to EV buses. When you think about data center, I just mentioned that. When you think about cooling home and building, so that whole part of the economy will continue its shift towards the use of electricity. But not only electricity, green electricity. We need to make sure that the electrons are generated by carbon-free source of generation. But there still will be, and there will remain a part of the economy that cannot really shift to electricity for a number of operational reasons, some of them being long-haul flights. I don't think we're going to sit anytime soon in an electric flight that allows us to fly from London Heathrow back to Washington, D.C., or certain power-heavy industry like chemical or steel. But still, for that part of the economy, there are solutions that are available today. We were talking about green hydrogen. Green hydrogen is one of the solutions that already exists today. The economics might not be here, but the technology exists. So what does it mean for the US? I just want to put things in perspective again, to give us a sense of what's in front of us when we think about the change in investment that needs to happen in the US. There's been a number of estimations, so this number is as valid as others. But overall, the previous administration, the Biden administration, had declared that the US would reach net zero by 2050. So all the analysts at the time say, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, that means that by 2050, between 2023 and 2033, we in the US need to put online about 900 gigawatts. So again, 900 gigawatts, what does that mean of renewable energy? It means 1 gigawatt is enough power to power roughly 1 million homes, right? So that's 900 times 1 million homes. That's what we need to install in 10 years. This is a huge, huge number. So, but the US is already at work, right? So what type of investment are we already seeing when it comes to renewable energy? So, and the energy, to support the energy transition. Number one is obviously renewable energy. Right? But number two also is battery energy storage, because one of the challenges with renewable energy is it cannot serve as baseload, meaning that it's not a stable source of energy. It goes up and down with the sun and the power of the wind. So you need battery energy storage, which is the second point here. But on top of that, when we look at the US, the vast majority of the renewable resources, whether it's wind or solar, are located in the middle of the country. And we know that a lot of the power consumption points are on the coast. So then you need really to expand the size of your grid and build those very long lines, which will bring power from the middle of the country all the way to the coast, which is where the power is needed. And the last one is digitalization. Our grid is becoming more and more complex, not only because we are introducing variable sources of energy like renewable and solar, but also for many other reasons. So we need also to digitalize the grid to make sure that the grid can handle the variability of renewable energy, can be more reliable, and can be more resilient. So the other element also, which is key, where we need to change a little bit the way we've been working, is long-term thinking. I think as an industry around the world, we've been we've been a little bit transactional historically, and now we need to think a little bit more long-term, because those investment that we need are investment which takes a lot of time. I'll give you an example right now. We are working on a project called Champlain Hudson Power Express. And this project is a project which brings renewable energy from Quebec, Canada, hydropower, brings that power all the way to New York City underwater, down the Champlain Lake and the Hudson River all the way to the Bronx, or Brooklyn, I should say. So this project, it took more than 10 years to get all the approval that this project needed. So that's why we really need to take a long-term vision when we think about the building of the grid, because those projects take a lot of time to develop and then a lot of time also to execute. So that piece, the long-term view is essential. So here, the good news is that we see around the world countries taking steps to expand the horizons of their planning. So you can see here Germany and Europe in particular, and part of it because of what we've seen over the last 3 years and the disruption of the energy sector in Europe is taking a longer view, the 10 to 20 years. And the good news was in the US last year, the FERC adopted the 920 rules, which ask the US transmission providers to conduct long-term transition planning in the horizon of 20 years, which is, we believe as a company, is essential to be able to plan today and start thinking about and start developing the project and the grid that we need 20 years from now. So at the end of the day, as we go through this planning process, the 10 to 20 years planning process, there are 3 elements that we need to keep in mind. The first one is security of supply. I mentioned that already for geopolitical reason, for reliability reason, for resiliency reason. That's one. The second piece is sustainability. I mentioned one aspect of it, which is making sure that the electrons that we generate are green electrons. But the second aspect also is the assets that we put in the field. This industry, the green industry, has its own challenge, meaning that we have deployed over the years assets which have a negative impact on greenhouse gas emission, in particular because we use specific type of gas, which are used because they have great dielectric characteristic, but they also are not good for the environment. So the industry needs to move away from that. So as an industry, we need to make sure that going forward, whatever we put in the substation is sustainable and we can recycle those equipment. And then the last one is extremely important, and we've heard that one more and more over the last couple of years, is the topic of affordability, right? We've seen now many utilities getting pushed back when they go to their state commission for a rate case, pushback from the commissioner saying, no, you know, our constituent cannot afford to see the price of their electricity bill going forward. But that's a challenge that we have right now. The US grid needs a major revamp because we've underinvested for a number of decades now. So now we have to do catch up, and we have to expand the grid, not only because we have underinvested, but because of all the growing and accelerating demand in power. So here, there's the challenge that we need to face, and we need to find a solution where, yes, we need to invest, but we need to do it in a way with certain technology, with certain business model to make sure that at the end of the day, the constituent can still afford to pay can afford the electricity bill on a monthly basis. So just to kind of wrap it up about this topic, as we plan, as we start to think about building the grid of the future, the issue is not technology. The technology exists. Truman, you mentioned the HVDC technology, which is a technology that we invented 17 years ago, and now which is essential around the world to build power over long distance. Power transformers right now, which is a very important part of any electrical substation, which is what was on fire last week on Friday in the UK, which created a disruption. This technology exists, and we are the bigger supplier of that technology, and this is a well-proven technology. So the technology is not really the issue. Yes, we need more R&D, we need more development, and we'll continue as an industry to do that, but the vast majority of the technology exists. But really, the couple of things that needs to change. First one are business models. We cannot expect that the way we've been working and deploying grid infrastructure for the last 50 years at the pace at which we've been doing it is going to work for the future when we need to do it 10, 20, 30 times faster, right? So we need to change the way we work. So I think in certain part of the world, we've seen that in Europe, for example, in Germany. We've seen some good example in the UK. We've seen some good example of different ways of working between utilities and technology provider like us. So I think here we are very encouraged to see that we can change, we can adapt, and I think, but we need to continue to adopt the right business model so that we can deploy the new infrastructure at scale and at speed. And the last one I would highlight here is policies, right? Some of those business models can only be deployed if the policies are adapted to it. And I'll give you an example. Last year, we were working on a very big project in Germany to bring offshore wind power from the North Sea all the way back to the shore. And we wanted with our customer, Stenet, which is a German utility, to do it differently. And the regulatory environment was not allowing us to do that. So our customers went to the regulators and was able to explain to the regulator that changes in the regulation had to be made, and the changes were made. And now we're working with these customers to deploy a transmission line to go grab the power which has been generated offshore and bring it back to Germany and the Netherlands. So again, here we as an industry need to work with regulators to make sure that the regulation of the future is fit for purpose to be able to, again, to deploy the grid at scale and at speed. So now the last piece I mentioned was the fact that we need also digitalization of the grid is essential. But with digitalization, we all know comes issues. So cybersecurity going forward, even more than before, cybersecurity is key. So we need to make sure that every single asset that we deploy in the field is cyber secure, and also all the software that we use are also safe. So that's what I want to tell you. But before I conclude, just wanted to give you tell you a little bit of a few words about Hitachi Energy, just for you to get a sense of, okay, why am I here? Why am I talking about those topics? Was because we've been in that industry, like Truman mentioned earlier, for more than 100 years. So Hitachi Energy is part of the broader Japanese Hitachi group. We are about 50,000 employees around the world. And actually, our headquarters for North America, which is where I'm based, is on the NC State campus. Don't hold us against us. But we are very close from here, 30 minutes away on the NC State campus. And we have about in the US 5,000 companies. And what we do is very, quote unquote, simple. Think about it as we provide all the technology that you need from the point of generation all the way to the point of consumption to allow, for example, to bring power and light to this building. And I just want to highlight a couple of two projects to sometimes it's easier to understand what someone does when you give an example. So two examples I want to highlight is the project I mentioned earlier, the Champlain Hudson Power Exchange project. And just to give you an example of how important those type of projects are. Like I said, this is a project where a transmission line is being pulled all the way from Quebec province in Canada to New York City, right next to the LaGuardia Airport. And the impact of this project is such that once this project is up and running exactly a year from now, the impact that this project will have is on the environment will be the equivalent of removing more than 40% of all the cars in New York City from a greenhouse gas emission. One single project. Another project that we're working on right now as we speak is called the SunZia project, which is SunZia is the biggest US wind farm ever built, and it's under construction right now, which will generate 3.5 gigawatts. So again, 3.5 gigawatts, it's the equivalent of powering 3.5 million homes. And what we do is we provide a transmission technology that will bring the power from the middle of New Mexico all the way to California. And then finally, I mentioned digitalization. And so here, there are many applications, but one of them which is very important is, and we've seen unfortunately what happened in January in Los Angeles, is the growing risk of fires. And one of the challenges that represent, or one of the reasons for powers outage linked to fire sometimes is linked to the fact that trees fall on transmission line, and that generates sparks and that generates fires. And that's here where we come in, and we've developed a AI technology where we use satellite images to be able to detect where trees are getting too close to come forth to the grid, and where we need to dispatch a team to clear that a little bit. So again, just to give you a sense of the type of technology that this industry is deploying, which we might not all be aware of, right? So the last piece I'd like to leave you with is the fact that this industry, like I say, is really in what we call a super cycle. There's a huge demand. So number one, if you are thinking about a career and looking for a job, well, I would look at this industry, the green industry, because we are really in the middle of a super cycle, and we estimate that the speed at which investment are coming are going to last for at least 20 years, right? So as a company, we're investing to be able to support that. We've announced that we will invest between 2020 to 2027, $9 billion in our factories, in our people. We've never done that in the life of our company, which is a pretty old company, as was mentioned earlier. And in the US in particular, we're investing. Here I'm highlighting a couple of projects in Mexico and in the US, but we're investing much more than that. And so because we are really committed to the US market. So I'll conclude and say, it's a great time to be in that industry. There's a lot happening. We need a lot of talent. So all of you here, I'm specifically talking to the students here, come talk to us. We are 30 minutes away. Yes, we're on the NC State campus, but we have different locations. We'd love to talk. Thank you. Any question, I should say, right?
Flex. That was an absolutely excellent presentation. Councilmember Steve Rao, the town of Morrisville, I'm an elected official. I want to hone in on what you talked about data centers, because recently I've been getting approached by a lot of mayors around Wake County concerned about they're being approached by data centers. And if you look at, I want to focus in on AI. So everyone's using ChatGPT, generative AI, all these cities and towns are talking about that. So what advice do you have as policymakers in terms of, if we are going to work with Duke Energy or another provider like an Amazon or Google or Meta, what should be the strategy of, working with these companies so that we are as efficient as we can with our energy. And I'll just end with my question with Morrisville, the town of Morrisville last year was notified that we went from 100 megawatt to 125 megawatt in 16 months, and that we were running out of power. So they had to build a substation in my neighborhood, which is why I still run with a ski mask in my neighborhood, just joking. But the problem is that, we're running out of power just based on the demand of our infrastructure. So could you share some insight I can take back to City Hall?
Thank you. So that's a big topic. Every single utility, as we speak, is faced with that challenge. Is on one hand you have data center. They move at their own speed, meaning that they're much faster than our industry, the green industries. And there is indeed that clash today where those data centers come in and say, I need power in 12 months, and we as an industry say, I hear you, but I'm sorry, it takes me 2 years to build a transformer. So we can't really match here. So there's no magic bullet, right? To your question, but from what we've seen, and we've seen that kind of that phenomenon starting 3 years ago in the different industries. So this is the parallel I would make: the EV industry. We started to have those conversations 3-4 years ago, where also we are working with some fleet owners in the US who are shifting their gas-powered trucks to EV trucks, and we provide the infrastructure. And so the conversation then was, listen, we just need to talk more. You cannot expect, you need to understand the reality of the grid world, which is to build a new substation, to give a new access when there is no more power. It's a multi-year journey, right? It's not a one-year journey. So you need to engage with us much more in advance. So my advice would be here, again, it's a very complex, so it's a small advice as part of a broader set of advice, but it's engagement. Let's make sure that community like yours engage as early as possible with the data centers who have an interest or might have interest, and engage also bringing obviously your local utility. Right now there is no magic answer. 2 weeks ago I was at Sarah Week in Houston, which is a major annual conference for the energy sector, all type of energy, and that was a big topic. And there was really that tension between the hyperscalers and the energy companies. And so what we see right now is oil and gas companies say, well, I'll do it. I will build a gas-generated power plant, and I'll provide you the power, which is a great idea. But now we're running into supply chain issue where there is not enough gas turbine available. So okay, that solution is gone. So I would say it will take some years to really get where we need to get, but early engagement is one of the answer.
Thank you. Hi, Jeff Pollack. I'm with the Port of Corpus Christi Authority. We're the largest exporter of domestically produced energy. Really appreciate the way you framed sort of those three concurrent imperatives. I did notice you didn't mention the word nuclear at all in your presentation. Appreciate your thoughts on how we possibly produce 900 gigawatts of power in this country in the next 10 years, or anywhere on the planet, frankly, without decentralized and next generation nuclear.
Yeah, no, good question. Nuclear is part of the answer, and you don't have to convince Hitachi because we have a joint venture with GE to provide nuclear. And as we speak, we are building a nuclear plant in Ontario, which is the first SMR built in North America. So yes, I mean, nuclear is clearly one of the options. I mean, we've all seen the announcement from Microsoft with Constellation and 3 Mile Island, and then we saw Google, we saw Meta. So everybody believes in that, and we clearly see, and we clearly believe that nuclear is part of the mix. Frankly, it's going to be an all of the above. Given the size of the challenge that we have, it is an all of the above type of situation right now. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for your attention. Thanks.